Eudaimanya, systems and frameworks to improve habits, mind, and life.
Welcome to Eudaimanya, the Black Swan. Imagine someone who has been making the exact same financial decisions for 20 years.
Just day in and day out running the exact same playbook.
Right, exactly. And every single year goes by without a catastrophe. The profits just sort of roll in slow and steady.
And that consistency, it feels incredible. Every year of peace just cements their confidence.
Oh, totally. They look in the mirror and think, I have figured it out. I am an absolute genius.
Because the data says they are.
Right. But no one taps them on the shoulder to warn them that a prolonged period of calm actually proves absolutely nothing. And then, well, out of nowhere on a random Tuesday, disaster strikes.
The market evaporates, and they just lose everything in a matter of hours.
It is a terrifying scenario, and that's exactly why we are jumping into this deep dive on Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book, The Black Swan.
Yeah, we are going to look at why that illusion of safety is so deeply hardwired into us.
Our mission today is really to figure out why we are so completely blind to highly improbable, massive impact events. And, how you can stop being the sucker in a world that is just fundamentally unpredictable.
And from my end, I really want to tension test Taleb's system from the outside. Look at where his logic applies flawlessly and where it might start to buckle under the pressure of human psychology.
That's perfect because, well, to understand the architecture of this book, we first have to understand the specific lens Taleb is looking through. He didn't just invent these theories in a quiet university office.
No, not at all. He was a quantitative options trader, dealing with massive, chaotic financial swings.
Exactly. But even before that, he grew up in Lebanon. And in the book, he describes Lebanon as this incredibly stable paradise of tolerance.
Right. For centuries, all these diverse communities lived together in what felt like this permanent, unbreakable equilibrium.
Unbreakable until it wasn't. Abruptly, without any real warning, it dissolved into a brutal 17-year civil war.
That abrupt transition from absolute peace to total chaos. The trauma is the rupture that his entire worldview was built on.
Yeah, and that brings us to the first major false belief he combats, which answers one of the fundamental questions of the book. Why is prolonged calm no guarantee of anything?
Because we have this deeply ingrained belief that, the more historical data we have, the more experts we consult, the better we can predict the future.
But Taleb realized that market disasters or historical upheavals, they aren't just minor deviations on a standard bell curve.
No, they're massive events that the bell curve literally didn't even contemplate.
I love how he illustrates this with the turkey problem. So think about a turkey being fed by a farmer for 1,000 days.
Every single day confirms the farmer is a great guy.
Exactly. From the turkey's perspective, the data is flawless. Day 1, fed. Day 500, fed. If that turkey is a statistician, it looks at that chart and concludes with absolute certainty that the environment is perfectly safe.
Because the turkey is using historical data to predict the future, which, statistically seems completely logical.
Right up until the Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
The Black Swan event.
Yes. On day 1,000, the butcher comes in. But the crucial part of this concept is that it was only a black swan for the turkey.
The butcher knew exactly what was going to happen.
Right. So the practical consequence for you listening to this is that a long track record of safety often just masks a growing hidden risk.
If we tension test this a bit from the outside, the fundamental error the turkey made wasn't bad math. It was bad context.
How do you mean?
Well, the turkey fundamentally misunderstood the rules of the world it was living in. It assumed it lived in a benign world where past averages actually matter. But the underlying structure of that farm was entirely designed for one single extreme terminal event.
That distinction is exactly the first major pillar of Taleb's system. He creates a taxonomy of randomness, dividing the world into two domains, Mediocristan and Extremistan.
The mild versus the wild.
Yeah, in Mediocristan, the world is governed by mild randomness. The average dominates. So, in the book, his classic example is human weight.
Right, physical properties.
If you take 1,000 people in a stadium, calculate their average weight, and then add the heaviest human being in recorded history, the overall average barely moves.
Because biological realities have hard limits.
Yeah.
The collective just totally absorbs the exception.
But then he introduces Extremistan. This is where wild randomness lives. Here, one single exception completely dominates the total.
This is where things get dangerous.
Take that same stadium of 1,000 people, calculate their average net worth, and then you add Bill Gates to the room.
Suddenly, everyone else's wealth is just a rounding error.
Exactly. His wealth is so massive that the average is completely destroyed by one single data point. And without making this distinction, we apply the wrong statistical tools to Extremistan problems.
We use Mediocristan math in an Extremistan world,
Which completely blinds us to real risk.
Now, this is where we have to establish a clear boundary condition of his system. The framework collapses if you apply it backward.
Like treating Mediocristan as if it were Extremistan.
Exactly. If you treat physical or biological processes like, say, heart rates, where conventional stats actually do work, as if they are Extremistan, you'd be paralyzed by irrational paranoia.
You'd be terrified your heart might randomly beat 1,000,000 times a minute.
Right, which physically can't happen. But here's the radical assumption Taleb makes. He assumes that the modern social, economic, and technological world behaves almost exclusively like Extremistan.
That it's all just wild winner-take-all dynamics.
Yes, and from an external analytical view, that is a highly questionable assumption. Not all social scientists accept that.
Sure, financial markets and tech startups are pure Extremistan.
But maybe not everything. But wait, if the social world really is governed by extreme, unpredictable events, why do we constantly feel like we know what's going on?
Because we hate uncertainty. Which answers the second fundamental question. Why do we convince ourselves that the past was predictable? Taleb explains this through what he calls the triplet of opacity.
The three ways our brains misinterpret history.
Right. First, the illusion of understanding. We literally just think the world is simpler than it actually is.
We underestimate the chaos.
Second is retrospective distortion. We view history in the rearview mirror, where everything suddenly looks organized and inevitable.
The Monday morning quarterback syndrome.
Yeah, and the third is the overvaluation of experts. We trust people who, as Taleb says, platonify.
Platonify.
Yeah, they take messy reality and force it into neat, completely flawed theoretical categories. And these three things together produce the narrative fallacy.
Ah, the storytelling trap.
We take random facts and we weave them together into a logical story, creating a completely false sense of causality.
And this addresses another fundamental question in the book.
Right.
Why do we prefer predicting in place of preparing?
Because our brains demand a compact story.
Yes, we desperately want to predict the exact black swan instead of just preparing for any black swan, because predicting gives us a narrative.
It makes us feel safe.
Exactly. Now, to tension test this, I want to compare Taleb's approach here with Daniel Kahneman's work.
Oh, like System 1 and System 2 thinking.
Right. Kahneman tackles these exact same cognitive biases, but from the perspective of individual psychology, fast versus slow thinking.
He focuses on the hardware of the brain.
Yes. But Taleb is explaining why we fail from the perspective of systemic risk structure. Two completely different ways to explain why humans get it so wrong. Kahneman says your brain is flawed. Taleb says the structure of the world is designed to deceive you.
That is such a crucial distinction. The environment itself is hostile to our understanding, and a huge part of that deception is what Taleb calls the cemetery of silent evidence.
This is one of the most powerful concepts in the book.
It really is. It asks the third fundamental question. Why do we copy the strategies of successful people without seeing those who failed in the exact same way, in silence?
Because the failures don't write memoirs.
Exactly. Taleb tells this incredible story about a philosopher named Diagoras. So people show Diagoras these painted tablets of worshippers who had prayed to the gods and then survived a shipwreck.
The ultimate proof that prayer works, right?
That was the argument. But Diagoras just looks at the tablets and asks, well, where are the pictures of the sailors who prayed and drowned anyway?
The silent evidence.
Yes. We only ever see the survivors. Think about a graveyard of failed entrepreneurs. They had the exact same traits: optimism, risk-taking, waking up at 4 a.m. as the millionaires.
But we only interview the millionaires.
Right. And we falsely assume the traits caused the success when the only real differentiator was pure luck in Extremistan.
Now, from the outside, this is a massive point of failure for anyone trying to analyze success. If you ignore the cemetery of unseen failures, Taleb's entire system of skeptical empiricism totally collapses.
You have to see the unseen.
Right. If you base your risk models only on the survivors, you are mathematically guaranteeing you will be blindsided.
So, if past success is an illusion of silent evidence, and historical data is just the turkeys chart, can we at least calculate our odds going forward? Like, in a game of chance?
Absolutely not. That is the ludic fallacy.
The dangerous habit of confusing real-world uncertainty with the sterile, closed rules of a casino game.
A casino has known rules. Real life has zero known parameters.
Right. Which brings us to the fourth fundamental question. Why can the middle ground in risk management be the most dangerous position?
Oh, the fragile middle.
Yeah. If you build a medium-risk portfolio, Taleb says it's like picking up pennies in front of a steamroller.
You win these tiny amounts daily.
You feel so smart, so steady, until the day the steamroller speeds up and you lose everything.
So what is the mechanism he proposes to survive this?
The barbell strategy. Instead of sitting in that fragile middle, you go to two extreme ends. You put 85 to 90% of your assets into something hyper-conservative, like the safest government treasury bills.
Total protection from the steamroller.
Exactly. And then you take the remaining 10 to 15% and you go hyper-aggressive, venture capital style bets. You have a known maximum loss. You can only lose that 15%, but you have literally infinite upside.
You expose yourself to positive black swans.
Exactly. And to maintain this, you practice what he calls negative empiricism. True knowledge is knowing what you don't know.
The anti-library.
Yes. In the book, he talks about Umberto Eco's massive library of unread books. The unread books remind you of your ignorance. It is far more reliable to know what is false than to blindly believe what is true.
The barbell strategy is mathematically brilliant, but, and this is a massive gap in the book's logic, Taleb doesn't resolve the psychological toll this strategy takes on a human being.
How so?
Well, this strategy demands enduring a constant bleeding of small losses. Day after day, your 15% wild bets are going to zero.
You just look like a loser.
Hey, exactly. You look like an absolute idiot to your peers for years, waiting for the one extreme event that finally justifies it all.
While your neighbor is getting steady 8% returns.
Right. Human biology and our dopamine reward systems are simply not built for that kind of delayed gratification. To execute the barbell strategy, you have to fight your own psychological hardware every single day.
That is a fascinating external limit. The math works, but the human might break first.
Exactly.
So wrapping up this deep dive, pulling together all these internal mechanisms and external realities, I think the final takeaway here is pretty clear.
We cannot predict the future.
We really can't.
Yeah.
But we can structure our exposure to it. We must avoid that fragile middle, accept the bleeding of the barbell, and prepare for the unknown unknowns instead of trying to forecast them.
Which leaves you with one final, lingering thought to explore on your own. Think about your own life right now. How many of the decisions that give you a sense of security today depend, in reality, on the simple fact that the next extreme event just hasn't arrived yet?
If this video was useful, give it a like, subscribe, and share. More systems and frameworks in the next Eudaimanya video.